Is James Hagens truly the future of the Boston Bruins? And is Michael Hage cementing himself as the future at 2C for the Montreal Canadiens? We explore it all on today's episode of NCAA Roundup.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this show, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. I'm your host, Sebastian High, the USA Scout at Elite Prospects. And on today's episode, we're going to stick in my region, but we're not focusing on draft eligibles today. We're looking at NHL drafted talent who represent pieces of the future for the organizations that have selected them, including James Hagens of the Boston Bruins, Michael Hage of the Montreal Canadiens, and Charlie Cerrato of the Carolina Hurricanes. And we're going to be focusing on a pair of Bruins prospects in the first segment, with Hagens and Dean Letourneau, who's finally catching steam at the college level. They will move on to talking about Michael Hage and William Moore, so keeping the Boston Bruins train rolling there with Moore in the second segment. And finally, wrapping things up in the third with Will Horcoff, drafted by the Pittsburgh Penguins in the first round of this most recent draft, and Charlie Cerrato, a second-round pick of the Carolina Hurricanes, who's been leading the charts of NCAA scoring for this entire season so far. But before we dive into the entire show here, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app right now at FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So, James Hagens of the Boston Bruins. He is the headliner here for today's episode. He's on the thumbnail if you clicked on it on YouTube, and there's a reason for that. This is a truly exciting and dynamic talent who has been showing his skills here so far this season, but there's definitely still another gear for him to hit that he has in his locker. We've seen him be the best player on the ice at so many different levels through junior hockey and international tournaments for Team USA. And he has been the best player for Boston College so far this season, but Boston College has gotten off to a relatively struggling start here early in the year. I mean, they have 2 wins through 5 games here so far this campaign. They lost against both Quinnipiac and Denver, the 2 biggest challenges they faced so far this campaign, and also tied a game against a very much struggling team at the University of Minnesota after winning the first game of that weekend series. And we'll be chatting about James Hagens and Dean Letourneau, 2 of the top players on this team this season, both of the Boston Bruins. I mean, Boston College may as well be called the Boston Junior Bruins at this point, with the amount of prospects drafted by the Bruins on this team. Like, Boston loves selecting from their own backyard, and especially players that keep developing in that backyard. I mean, on this year's lineup, there are 6 Boston Bruins draft picks on this team, and if you combine the selections from every other NHL team, you also have 6. So the Bruins have half of the drafted prospects in this lineup, and Letourneau and of course James Hagens are the 2 big names of this. And we'll also talk about the next big guy, William Moore, in the second segment. So let's kick things off here with James Hagens, because this kid is electrifying. The dynamic skill he brings to the ice every single game is just so exciting. The speed at which he plays, the ability to deceive and manipulate off the rush at his highest speeds. It's really where he's most dangerous in terms of breaking down defenses, is when he's attacking them head on at pace. And he's showing that once again here this season, doing his best work off the rush. And he's a guy that, with elite level skating and playmaking, and also overall creativity and IQ, I think has such a bright future ahead of him. And definitely, to me, a future piece on a first line in Boston within maybe 2-3 years if you stretch it. And he's a player that has just so much going for him, and I don't think he deserved to fall to 7th overall as he did on draft day, but the Bruins are certainly not going to be complaining about that fate, and definitely a guy that I think is showing this season why he's special. And on this team with Boston College among the scoring leaders, should come to no surprise that James Hagens features at the very tippity top of it as the only player to be over a point a game so far. He's scored 3 goals and 6 points through 5 games. And Dean Letourneau is at 5 points in 5 games already, well surpassing his point total from last season, where he scored 3 assists in 36 games, and that was it. He's already scored 2 goals this season, gotten his first tallies in college hockey, added 3 assists to match his total from last season for 5 points there. And he's been playing bigger and bigger minutes as well as the season's gone on. He played almost 18 minutes against the University of Denver, which was almost just seconds off of the ice time that James Hagens logged in that losing effort where they lost 7-3 against a Denver team really catching steam here this season. But what I wanted to highlight with James Hagens is really that he's taking a step here this season. Last year, he was not the go-to guy on his team. Of course, they still had Ryan Leonard and Gabe Perreault, who have now made the jump to professional hockey with their respective teams in Washington and with the Rangers. And James Hagens is really taking control of the reins here. And I'd love to quote here a scouting report written by my colleague Whitaker Hart at Elite Prospects. And this is from the October 10th game against the University of Minnesota. And Whitaker writes, James Hagens still looks very similar to the player we saw last year at BC. The pace of play is very high, generating speed through the middle of the ice and catching pucks between checks of the opposing trap. His speed is effective at boosting his on-puck pace of play, but he also got repurposed in this game to win loose puck races and create possessions. He finished hits on the forecheck and even had a goal called off for a previous offside, but it was a nice flash of timing and sense to bury the backdoor goal. It's a good start to the year for Hagens, but the production and dominance will have to come up a notch still. And yeah, I think that he really encapsulates this season for James Hagens really nicely, that he's taking a step in terms of dominating shifts, really making this team his own, but that there's definitely still a higher ceiling for what he can achieve this season with this team in terms of becoming one of the most dynamic creators in all of college. I think he, in terms of skill set, should be in the running for the Hobey Baker Award this season, but his performances will have to match that that toolkit and that projection. And overall, he's also going to have to start winning some more games for his team. He's been really good so far this season, but he hasn't necessarily been the difference maker that steals a win here or there for his team, even if he is the best line driver that they have. And as for Dean Letourneau, a guy that got bashed to oblivion last season for being an NHL bust and way overdrafted in the late first round. All he is a big body, can't do anything else. And I think he's doing a great job right now at popping the bubble on those statements, because this has always been a player with just significant amounts of skill at his disposal. The handling ability, the playmaking, of course, the physicality, right? Like, I mean, you can't really gloss over the fact that Dean Letourneau is 6'7" and 229 pounds. And if I go back to quote what I wrote about him in our off-season prospect rankings for the Boston Bruins pool, Dean Letourneau finished at number 2 in our rankings, and I edited this article, so I had the final say on where each prospect was ranked, and I made the executive decision to make Dean Letourneau finish ahead of guys like Fraser Minton, who, of course, a lot more NHL ready and more polished at this point, but there's just so much potential with Letourneau. And what I wrote about him was, by year's end, Letourneau brought reliable physicality along the boards, defensive engagement, and solved problems in tight quarters with his handling and passing skill. His ability to disrupt on the forecheck, engulfing his opponents and outworking them in the corners, increasingly stood out as a strength at this level as he acclimatized to the intensity of NCAA hockey. Still, It's his deftness with the puck, playmaking creativity, and flashes of translatable power elements, cutting to the net and dragging defenders with him, that make his NHL upside so high. He's always going to be a long-term project. He remains a handful of years out from making an impact with the Bruins, but the runway to forge a top 6 level remains tantalizing. He's entering a huge season, however, aiming to prove that one pedestrian year won't define his collegiate career. And considering he's off to a point-a-game start to the season and clambering his way up the lineup from playing 10 minutes, 12 minutes early in the season to playing closer to 18 here a month in, he's really making his talents shown, both to the coaching staff, the fan base at BC, and Boston Bruins fans as well, that this is a special talent. He's got a lot of skills at his disposal, has really high upside. He's a unicorn of a player, and especially watching him on the ice in moments with James Hagens, got a froth at the mouth a little bit at the possibilities of these guys developing chemistry and bringing that to the National Hockey League someday, because these are both intelligent playmaking forwards with very different frames. Of course, Hagens is an undersized transition driver. Letourneau is a hulking power forward with good skating, fantastic handling ability, and a whole lot of physicality to go alongside it all. And I think that if these two are able to really mesh over the course of this season, that Bruins fans are going to have something very special to watch in their own backyard this campaign. And we'll keep talking about the Bruins prospect at Boston College with William Moore in the next segment, as well as Michael Hage of the Montreal Canadiens, who is off to a blistering start to his sophomore campaign. Before we do that, we've got a quick message from our sponsors here at Locked On NHL Prospects. Hockey season is officially here, and nothing beats being in the arena for those opening night games. But let's be real, getting tickets can be such a headache. Between waiting in queues, surprise fees, and prices that jump right before checkout, it's so easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is cheer on your favorite team. That's where Gametime comes in, the app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack to scoring amazing NHL tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. Their zone deals are a game changer. You pick the section, Gametime picks your seats, and you save big bucks. You can even find NHL tickets for under $25. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. All right, let's keep this episode rolling here as we stay in Boston, both with Boston College and the Boston Bruins pipeline, as William Moore has gotten off to his start of his NCAA career here this campaign. Drafted in the second round at 51st overall by the Bruins in the most recent draft. He's an intelligent, creative forward with a lot of runway as a potential power piece. He's got some really nice physical details, but still has to fill out his frame. He's listed at 6'3" and 181 pounds, and definitely still getting there in terms of showing that power ability against the pace and physicality of college opposition. But I think he's been pretty decent so far in his first 5 games of college action, playing mostly on the third line and averaging about 14 minutes a night here for Boston College. And he's a guy that I really liked watching last season for his combination of playmaking IQ and ever-improving physicality. At the beginning of the year, this guy was just getting bullied off puck to the point that he was just avoiding physical battles entirely. If there was a board battle, he would skate around it. He would not engage in a real productive way. And by year's end, he was much feistier, getting involved, showing some power details in terms of cutting to the net and really flashing the fact that he is a bigger player and he does have some advantages over other guys he comes up against. But it's definitely still a work in progress for him to bring that style that he showed against USHL competition last year to the college level consistently. And have another scouting report from Whitaker Hart here to quote as from that same game on October 10th against the University of Minnesota, saying, "Will Moore did not exactly shine in this game. On offensive zone cycles, he was limited to a net front role, while his line mates, 2 older players with less pedigree, controlled the play along the perimeter. When Moore finally was released from his stationary position, he appeared too physically immature to hold off defenders or make plays behind the net. He struggled to advance pucks cleanly to the next station and was neutralized fairly easily. The protection and confidence showed a bit more in the third period, perhaps as he continued adjusting to the NCAA pace, and he found ways to attack high wingers who couldn't yet exploit his physical limitations. It's going to take significant strength and physical developments for Moore to become an impact NHLer, but time is on his side and skill is most certainly here. And yeah, I think that this is a part of the process with a player like William Moore, who does have 3 points so far in 5 NCAA games with Boston College, including a goal. And he's a guy that I think could certainly take that next step over the course of this season to maybe click at like 0.75 points a game by year's end. I think he's skillful enough, and he showed last year as well that he can adapt to these exact same challenges, but now against better competition. But because he's already shown his ability to learn, make those adjustments, change his reads, change his engagement to fit the needs of his team better, I think he's got that runway. But Bruins fans, I'd love to hear from you down below as well. If you're watching on YouTube, what are your thoughts of this trio of high-end talents from Boston College? Of course, James Hagens is the gem of the mix, but what are your thoughts on all three of them? I'd love to hear from you down below. And we move on to the big division rival, the Montreal Canadiens, as we check in with the University of Michigan and Michael Hage, who leads the team both in scoring and offensive driving and overall playmaking ability so far this season, as he's garnered 14 points in 8 games, including 6 goals and 8 assists. He has been the dynamo on offense for this team, and he's joint third in college scoring so far this campaign, behind the Penn State duo of Charlie Cerrato, who we will be talking about in the next segment, and JJ Webush. I think that Michael Hage is a guy that's really driving the offense there in Michigan. He's taking control and taking responsibility on this team, and just been so dynamic with the puck on his stick. He's constantly, he keeps his head up. He's such a dynamic skater. He's able to create off the rush, create off the cycle. His physicality has grown significantly since his draft year, and that's really helped his cycle creation in terms of getting to the middle ice, to the dirty areas, and making the little plays that secure and extend offensive zone possessions. And on top of that, just always being the outlet who can settle things down for his team when possession is contended and the teammate is in a panic position and just needs to send it to somebody to calm things down and regroup. Michael Hage is the go-to guy every single time he's on the ice, and his combination of high-end vision and sharp decision-making is such an important foundation to becoming a game-changing playmaker at the next level. He already is that at this level in the NCAA. He scored a point in all but one game, the second game against Providence, which was a 3-1 victory for Michigan. And he's done this production while averaging about 14 minutes a night, maybe 15 minutes a night so far for the University of Michigan. They've definitely been a team that's been scoring by committee rather than just putting the load on a single line to really do everything in terms of the offensive assignments. And to be producing at this clip with those assignments as a sophomore who only turned 19 in April, like this is a young player doing this, and with a 6'1", 198-pound frame, like this guy is solidly built. And I think that for the Montreal Canadiens, in terms of the hopes within the organization for that future position at second line center, Michael Hage is the brightest star. Of course, you have other contenders like Kirby Dach already in the National Hockey League. Alex Newhook has taken some really big steps so far this season and developed some great chemistry with Ivan Demidov. But Michael Hage is a guy that really has the blend of elite skating, high-end playmaking, strong IQ, really good shot as well. He's really diversifying himself as an offensive creator here this season, already almost hitting the 50% mark of his goal-scoring tally from last season, and we're only 8 games in. The steps he's taken in terms of really being the leader night in, night out on the ice for the best team in the NCAA here so far this season. The University of Michigan is off to a tremendous 7-1 start here this campaign, and are really putting themselves as one of the favorites to win the Frozen Four this campaign, and Michael Hage is their best player. So to be the current best player on the best team in college hockey is nothing to scoff at, and the Habs have a gem on their hands here. So definitely a lot of talent there accumulated by Atlantic Division teams in college hockey. And in the final segment, we'll be breaking down the leader in NCAA scoring, Charlie Cerrato, as well as William Horcoff, the partner in crime of Michael Hage, who's been off to a great goal-scoring start after being selected in the first round by the Pittsburgh Penguins. But before we do that, we got a quick message here from our sponsors at Locked On NHL Prospects. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the entire app. I love how FanDuel gives me so many different ways to play. I've built parlays, tried player props, and even followed the live lines during the game as the action is unfolding right in front of me. It really gives you all the choice in the world. My personal favorite it's got to be the parlays, as it allows me to combine predictions from multiple different games and different sports to really maximize my potential return on a single bet. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on that action. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. All righty, let's wrap up the show here in the final segment as we're talking about Will Horcoff and Charlie Cerrato, another pair of starlets here from the NCAA to wrap up this NCAA Roundup show. And let's kick things off with the Pittsburgh Penguins while staying with the University of Michigan. And that's by highlighting William Horcoff, the recent 24th overall selection at the 2025 NHL draft, and a player who's now up to 7 goals and 11 points through 8 games so far this season. Just a disgusting start to the year, and he's already surpassed his point tally from last season, which only came in 18 games because he made the unconventional jump during the early winter from the NTDP to the NCAA. And in those 18 games, he scored 4 goals and 10 points. He's already beaten both of those tallies here so far this campaign. Just off to a torrid start here for the 6'5", 203-pound left shot center. And he's a player that, has a bunch of hockey lineage with him. He's the son of Sean Horcoff, which should not surprise the members of the audience who are not of my generation. And Sean Horcoff, of course, a former captain of the Edmonton Oilers, also played with the Dallas Stars and the Anaheim Ducks late in his career. And Will Horcoff brings a whole bunch of quality things to the table. He's highly intelligent, a really solid handler, especially under pressure in terms of slipping pucks underneath, checking opponents, and really, really being able to vent off pressure by doing so, by drawing in defenders and playing through them into the space that they vacate, while being a really strong net front presence, bringing loads of physicality and sound two-way impact, and a really heavy shot. Like, there's not much that you kind of want more of in terms of a late first round power forward center who can do a bit of everything. I think he's a really easy player to project to playing NHL minutes in a bottom 6 at the very least, and has the toolkit to play on the second line as well down the road for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And he might only be like 2 years off from doing that. And we're seeing that the Penguins are not all averse from giving trust to young players, and even ones that have just been drafted, like Ben Kindle and Harrison Brunick here this season. And I think that Horcoff will be the next guy to kind of join that group of young starlets, the next generation of talent in Pittsburgh. And he's a guy that just is so impressive to watch on the ice. And this season, I think he's taking a step in all of the areas of strength that he has. I think the skating definitely still needs a little bit of refinement in terms of the mechanics, the fluidity, his ability to really build speed through his first 2 steps. But beyond that, you might have some small gripes with little details here and there, but overall, this is a refined power forward who can make an impact in all 3 zones, can be a finisher in the offensive zone, mop things up at the net front, get his stick onto point shots and rebounds and loose pucks and do all that while processing the game at an above average speed. And that combination of tools, I think, is just a perfect fit, not just for the NHL today, but for playoff hockey in today's climate. And to wrap up the show, let's highlight Charlie Cerrato of the Carolina Hurricanes and Penn State University. The 6-foot, 194-pound left shot center went completely undrafted in the 2024 draft, but was snapped up in the top 50 at 49th overall by the Hurricanes here in this past draft. And that was a draft selection that they got from trading down from 34th overall as the Habs wanted to move up for Alex Jurovsky. And instead, the Carolina Hurricanes nabbed a pair of very interesting talents there at the draft, of course, with Charlie Cerrato at 49th overall, and then they also used the 42nd overall pick, 41st overall pick to swing on goaltender Semyon Frolov out of Russia. And if you have any idea of the Russian track record of the Carolina Hurricanes, you're not going to doubt that pick whatsoever. And Cerrato is off to a blistering start. He leads the entire college ranks in scoring with 17 points in 8 games. That's over 2 points a game to start the season here. And last year, as a college freshman, he scored 15 goals and 42 points in 38 games. And this kid's got some special elements. He's really engaged, a high motor player, really effective at both ends of the ice, and a guy that I have a lot of respect for in terms of the approach he has on every single shift. He doesn't necessarily have the biggest game-breaking tools at his disposal. Like, the skating isn't elite, the handling skill isn't elite. He definitely still has room to grow in terms of the puck skills, but there's just so much to like with his overall toolkit and the upside that he brings to the ice. And he's certainly shown that so far with his college production. And in this offseason's prospect pool rankings, where Carolina finished at number 14 among the 32 NHL teams, Charlie Cerrato was only the 17th ranked player in the system, which is probably a bit too low here with another 10 games of hindsight in our favor now. But I wrote the profile for him in that article, and what I said was that Cerrato is an energetic and detailed pivot, and he had one of the best freshman campaigns in college hockey last season from an undrafted player, especially in terms of recent memory in the past few years, earning him a top 50 selection in his 3rd year of eligibility. More disruptive and supportive than dynamic, Cerrato's production came by in translatable situations, pushing defenders back, cutting inside, and dropping the puck to a trailer. He gets to the middle of the ice, plays with a physical edge, and shuts down passing lanes defensively. We have some questions about his offensive runway and how much more he can expand his on-puck impact, but his off-puck qualities pave a likely path to a bottom 6 NHL role. With improved tools and a focus on building his offense around his middle-driven playmaking and inside contact habits, Cerrato could raise his potential ceiling to a middle 6 capacity, potentially tasked with insulating the most dynamic player in college next season, Gavin McKenna. The NTDP alum could see a role more akin to what NHL coaches will ask of him this season. And he's showing that he has all of these abilities to insulate a player like Gavin McKenna. And overall, I think he's a guy that is making a lot of teams question why they passed on him twice over. I mean, in both those 2023 and 2024 NHL draft classes. And he's certainly showing that he has what it takes to be a difference maker at the pro level. I think there's a chance he turns pro at the end of this season. And the Carolina Hurricanes have such an ability at finding gems and taking their swings on players that they believe can make an impact relatively soon. And Cerrato might just be the next one in that mold for the Canes, and definitely a guy to keep an eye on here as the season evolves. And I'd be a bit surprised if he does finish at the end of the season still at the top of the charts in terms of college scoring. But if he does, he will have certainly proven a point against all the teams that passed on him 2 years running. But that wraps up the show here for us today. If you're watching on YouTube, please do leave us a comment down below with your thoughts on the show and overall your thoughts on the prospects that we talked about here today. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please do make sure to make us your first listen of the day. It's always greatly appreciated. And for your second listen, you can go on and check out Locked On Fantasy Hockey, where Flip and Steel break down everything you need to know to build yourself a competitive and sustainable fantasy roster. That's it from me here today. I'm your host, Sebastian High, the USA Scout over at Elite Prospects, and I'll catch you tuning in again very, very soon.